evening, everybody, and welcome to this England Football Learning webinar on effective communication, with a particular focus of how to build relationships with players and parents. So, the objectives of tonight's webinar, there are three, and they're up on the screen. First of all, what is that good club environment and how do we create one? So we'll be picking on the experiences and the expertise and the insights of the people on the panel about creating that good club environment and giving you lots of practical examples on how we do that. Hopefully we'll help you to better understand the individual player needs and manage parental expectations. As I talked about earlier, we've all got experiences and great insights about managing those relationships and also the challenges, and hopefully we'll talk through those and how we've resolved it. And then the sort of the real magic for me tonight on how we're going to do it and how that links in with some key coaching considerations. What do you think a good club environment is to begin with?
Well, it's a cracking question to start this evening. I guess I would just jump off what I said previously about making it the club being the best time of the week for them young players. So they might obviously love a variety of different things, but they come along because it's what they want to do. So I'd say around those things, I think ensuring it's a safe environment. And what I mean by that is a way that players feel inclusive, players feel that they can express themselves. I know in the chat someone's put around allowing that opportunity for players to make mistakes. And I would like to hope that very often now coaches do say those things. We want you to make mistakes, express yourself, be creative. But then it's also around the body language and the tone of voice in which allows then the players to feel that they truly can do that.
I think from a player perspective, for me, like psychological safety is just the fundamental within female football. As females, we always want to know why. Why is this decision being made? Why are we playing this way? Why are we using this formation? Why are we pressing like this? And if you've got a manager who you're able to have that trust in relationship with, where you can ask those questions and you don't feel you'll be ridiculed for asking those questions, it's massive. Now I'm in my own coaching journey. I want to be approachable for the players, for that psychological safety, especially, playing in a women's team in Tier 3 when you've got the younger girls coming through who are 16, 17. You want them to feel safe. It's a massive step up from in women's football under 18s to first team. So if I'm able to create that psychological safety and be that trusting person, it's almost like not a mum to them, but it's a home away from home. I want it to be like that. So if we can do that, then brilliant.
The whole club philosophy. So rather than just talking about individual coaches, have we got a whole club philosophy that underpins our why, if you like? Why are we doing what we're doing? What's our identity? What's our USP? And I think that's really, really important in terms of recognizing that as the children move up the ages and stages, then it might be that they move on to work with different coaches. And I think that consistency of messaging is really, really important. So yes, as individual coaches, we want to do a great job. We want to smile. We want to develop the person before the player. But getting coaches to think about what is our philosophy at our club, and perhaps if you're joining a new club, does that philosophy align to your own personal values? And without going into detail about my own club, we underpin it around enjoyment, sportsmanship, friendship, and challenge.
I'd just like to unpick that with you, with your experience of grassroots football. That there'll be colleagues on the webinar tonight who perhaps their club doesn't have a philosophy, and there might be ones who are looking to sort of edit it really to alleviate any current challenges that they may have. So in your experience, Vin, what's the best way of creating that club philosophy?
I think it needs to be a shared vision, Chris. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to find the time also to be on our committee. So obviously I coach with a single age group. But yeah, that shared vision and those shared values ultimately across the people who run the club, but also getting insights from your parents, from your players in terms of what's important to them. And I'll give you a little example. Our philosophy, as I've already said, is underpinned by ESFC. They're the 4 letters that represent our club name. And initially our C used to be community. And then we actually got in collaboration with a local community trust So then we actually change it. So I think it needs to be evolving as well, whereby you think, okay, this isn't quite achieving what we want to achieve.
And that philosophy for me helps to create and maintain, like you talked about, that really sort of positive, safe, inspiring environment for the players and also staff. And I know Stacey mentioned about a good club environment is also for your staff as well. And then obviously going through to develop and thrive on the pitch.
And this season done some, got everyone, and I love this. It's a shame I'm not a player anymore. We got every player to write something they love about each other. That's now in the dressing room under their shirt. So every match day, they get to see what every single player in the team has said about them. It might be stuff around them off the pitch, so kind of those softer skills. It might be related to what they're like on the pitch. And just seeing the players' smiles the first time they saw those sheets was just incredible. And that was then probably the best we played. We didn't win the game, but we were fantastic. And I really feel it was to do with that code of conduct and those values and just having that sheet for everyone to see what everyone thinks about them. Like, if you know people think really nice things about you, what it does for your confidence, especially as a female, it skyrockets. So yeah, it's been really successful.
The most important thing for me, what Katie said, was around like building confidence. For me, the best environments are, they put the players and the people at the centre of everything they do to develop people's confidence and self-esteem. For me, there's nothing more important than that psychological, social corner when it comes to football. I think, like, obviously all the football bits come alongside that, but for me, everything that we do should, I guess, look at that and how we can support players. Prime example of, obviously, I've recently started with a team. We've come up with one of our rights is around being respectful. So straight away, I've kind of asked them what that means to them. They've obviously been involved with it. So within 3 weeks, straight away, the ways in which that they sort out the equipment, everything like that, then it doesn't, it's not solely responsible on us as coaches. One, obviously, that's really helpful because I've only got 2 arms and I can't carry everything. But 2, it also teaches them young people life skills, transferable life skills when they go off, obviously, and to be good citizens of our country. So I think that's super important around, I guess, keeping to those code of conducts or rights, as we call them. It's super important. But then it's also we've got them, but they're not just words on a wall. They're not just words on a piece of paper. Are the coaches, are all of the staff, are the parents adhering to them and demonstrating them on a daily basis? And if they're not, let's have conversation as to why it is.
And I love the point you made, Stacey, about how it's important to live your culture and your values as coaches and everybody at the club. And it's really important that we get these, the young people and the players to understand the why. Katie was talking about that earlier, and it's so powerful. Vinny, just on sort of establishing boundaries and high standards of behaviours, in your experience, how do codes of conduct, how do they help with parents?
Oh, good question. I didn't see you going there, Chris. I think it's that clarity of messaging again, isn't it? In terms of, what we need our parents and carers to do. Ultimately, as the adults, we are all role models together, the coaches and the parents and the carers together. And I think when we blend everything we're talking about into practice sessions, giving the parents a role on practice session night. Obviously, we're all very, very keen to get our sessions up and running and to have the best session we can. But ultimately, let's have our parents involved. And by that, I mean, just create a culture whereby the parents will help with rolling the goals out or helping with equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And then that blends into match days for me as well. Again, when we're talking about inspirational opportunities for our children, our young players, the parents play a massive part in that. So engaging with the parents positively, whereby they can play a role on match days.
As Vin says, the use of parents is crucial from an organisation point of view, but also to reinforce the messages that you're getting across. How do we better understand individual players' needs and manage parent expectations? I'd like to go to Vinny really and talk about his club situation and experiences. Vinny, how does your communication style differ depending on if you're communicating with one of your players or parents?
Yeah, there's so many different aspects to communication, aren't there? Obviously, we have to get that logistical communication with our parents. So we'll all have our WhatsApp groups or our spawn groups. And then obviously with our players, there's the practice session communication. And I think that point Stacey really made about knowing your players and knowing whether it is the right time, the right place to pause a session and to make a coaching point. And there's a right place for everything, by the way, or whether you're going to do your drive-by intervention. I think for me, Chris, I'd just like to share with the audience something that I've only started doing in the last couple of years. So even though I've been coaching for 30 years, I've actually been grassroots coaching with the 7-year-olds as was for just 7 years. I've started doing player surveys, and I've found, not least that the boys now are 13, 14 years of age, the end of season survey, for example, back in May, June time, the amount of rich information that came from that player insight survey. So 17 players in the squad, and it was just 6 or 7 questions, and was so rich. I'll give you one example. One of the boys who I never dreamt would say this talked about, one of my questions was, is there anything you'd like Vinny to do differently or to change in terms of how I coach? So being really vulnerable. And he talked about rotating the captaincy more. And he said he'd like to be a captain, like to have a go being a captain. I thought, oh, wow, of course. He's a really good communicator as well. So anyway, I made him captain last week, and he played at sweeper. We play a back three, and his performance was outstanding. He was organising people. Better still, I missed practice on Tuesday night, and my son tells me that this little fella, he's had one go being captain, and he almost ran the training session on Tuesday night. So when we talk about that psychological development, if I'd have never done that survey, I'd have never found out this little bit of information about him, because he probably wouldn't have told me on a one-to-one verbally, just maybe out of a little bit of shyness, and his confidence has skyrocketed. So, those insights can be really rich. And there's just one little way that I'm doing things differently in the last 18 to 24 months.
I think from my experiences so far, when we think about it, so if I'm coaching a group of players once a week, the parents or the guardians that look after the child, they understand a lot more about that person than what I do. So I think what's really important is to include them to get their understanding around why it is the players are why they are and those kind of things. I think that's really important to include them on those conversations.
How do you use this, and how could colleagues on the webinar use the 6 capabilities to inform those better decisions?
I think when we're looking at them and watching them, we're trying to think about developing players and supporting players. We're involving them in the process, but it's also, do we know what we're really looking for? So when we're watching a training or watching a game, are we looking for all of these things at once? Because it absolutely won't be possible. And I certainly know that I'm, have been a fault for that, trying to watch everything at once. So can we really define and refine what specifically we're going after? So if we put our coaching lens on positioning, and we look at a certain player for a certain period of time, we can get some really specific insights and information that can really refine that in the coaching detail that we're providing them. So I would say absolutely everything that I guess we're delivering now within training and things, we're looking at these things and not in isolation always, because obviously positioning links to scanning with timing.
What are your top tips then we're dealing with parents, really, just to finish this section off?
I think the clarity and the consistency of messaging, parents having a real understanding of what our philosophy is, and as much as possible, having meetings with your parents, and the best time to do this is pre-season. And I say this, guys, on the call, with the COVID situation we've all been living with for the last 2.5 years. We know it's still out there. This September was the first time I'd had a parent meeting for 3 seasons. So again, we're never saying here that we're always doing things brilliantly, but I think, Chris, that importance of having an opportunity to meet with your parents away from your practice session, away from your match day. Ours was in our little clubhouse Yeah, unfortunately, the ball wasn't open, but there we have it. And it was for an hour on a Friday night. And of course, it was voluntary. But the way I framed that for the parents was, I will be sharing with you some of the insights that your boys provided during the end of season survey. So please come and have a listen, and this will impact on how we're going to work together this season, underpinned by our philosophy and the bit the parents really want to know, so that this can help your individual child.
So part 3, as Vin says, just the key coaching considerations about communicating effectively. Vin and Stace, just conscious of time that we've got 12 minutes of people's valuable time on a Monday evening. How do you use the 4 corners yourself, Stacey, to reflect as a coach?
For me in particular, it's around if I zone in, I think like for me, like I've developed across all of these aspects in my 18 years of coaching so far, but I'd like to hope in a further 18, I will be even more effective in these. So as a prime example, around managing emotions is, I think, a really key one. So I'm very positive. I spoke a lot about smiling, trying not to be a mood hoover. But then also sometimes it's about like I'm saying these things, but then trying to recognize how my body language, if I'm saying to players and they're playing a match, I want you to make mistakes. I want us to play out from the back or do X, Y, and Z, but then we make mistakes. But then recognizing my emotional control of that on the sideline. So, because it's sometimes not what we say, it's what we say when we're not saying anything. In terms of are we smiling? Straight away, are our hands going in that? Are we going on our phone? Are we in our pocket? Are we turning to the other coach? Or if we are with another coach and moaning about something? Yeah, I absolutely try and reflect on these things. But I think what's really important as well, especially for those that are, well, in all aspects of coaching, is not to be too hard on yourself. I'd say I used to be one of the worst reflectors in terms of very hard on myself when things haven't gone right and I felt like I can't do it again. So I just say, I came up with this after every training and after every game. I would always make sure I had 2 positives of things that I've done as a coach, but then also reflecting on one thing that can be even better if. So I always make myself, and I discuss that with the person that I'm coaching or working with, or if it's a friend and I'm on my own, for example. I think that's really important.
My match day behaviour, and it's something I've been doing for a number of years, my touchline behaviour is I sit in a camping chair. And I do that because I want the players to play. And let's get it right. I am up and down now and again. It might be to deal with injuries. It might be to go and have a little chat with somebody. Because we also have, I don't know if any other coach has got this, that pull out, that concertina row, maybe 6, 7 or 8 seats. So we actually have that set at the back of our technical area, which sounds grand, but that's just some cones marked out away from the pitch. And so another behaviour, Rob, which hopefully will help you, is that before my game changers go on, game changers, not substitutes, game changers, I'll go and have a chat with them one at a time, and I'll sit with them on that long pull-out seating area. So I'm actually sitting side by side, if my player's here, and we're just having a chat. And I'm asking him what he wants to focus on today, what he'd like to improve, maybe linked to our theme. When I put those game changers on, so therefore young players come off, then once they've had a drink, I go and sit with them one at a time, often missing what's going on in the game, because ultimately the children want to play. They don't want to have us as PlayStation coaches directing everything they do. So that to me is one of the things I've really worked hard at, because when I started coaching 30 years ago, I was that sideline PlayStation coach.
Action plan moving forward. If you'd just like to reflect yourselves and maybe put in the chat box, or just have a think for yourself, what are you going to do differently as a coach as a result of attending this webinar?